Hi friends, starting with the 12 Jan editorial. The first editorial is elections are not a referendum. This editorial speaks about a particular trend in the state governments where the assembly elections are reduced to a referendum on a particular initiative or the measure by the government. So before going to that issue, let's look into a basic difference between the elections and referendum. So, elections is a form of decision-making process, by the voters to elect a representative. Whereas, referendum, also known as a plebiscite, it is an direct vote, in where the electorate are asked to give their decision on a particular proposal or the issue. So, in this, the electorate can either accept or reject a particular proposal or issue presented to them. Therefore, elections is an ongoing process of civic engagement, whereas referendum is an one-time event. So, the proposal that state assembly election should be reduced to a referendum on whether the Prime Minister was right or wrong on his decision regarding the decision of demonetization, it evokes a discomfort because the reason is, now let's look into basic definition of referendum. Referendum is to decide on a policy which has not yet been implemented. So, taking the example of Brexit vote, here the opinion of the people were asked, regarding whether the Britain should be a part of European Union or not. So, the opinion of the people were asked before taking the decision. Whereas if you take the demonetization, it's already been implemented. So after implementing here, now the people's opinion is asked. So this does not make any sense for I'm asking for validation after the implementation of a particular initiative. Moreover, state assembly election should not be reduced to a referendum because you're forcing the voter to decide on which government to choose based on a particular issue or the particular government scheme, etc. So whereas the citizen should decide on the government on depending on the overall analysis of the performance of the government and how it impacted him. Therefore, if you are forcing the citizen to decide on a particular issue, so you are diminishing the political competence of the voters to decide on what sort of government they wish to be ruled by. Now the question is, how will the citizen judge an elected government? How will the citizen arrive at a decision on if the government's initiatives or measures were right or wrong, and how will he bring out this overall analysis of all the dimensions of a particular issue or the particular initiative by the government? So, before debating on the effectiveness of a particular initiative or the particular scheme policy by the government, citizen also has an obligation to acquire the knowledge on all crucial dimensions of collective life. So, it means that he has to, have the knowledge of all the dimensions instead of just focusing on a particular dimension. Like for example, let's take the demonetization drive. So, let's assume that if a person is living in an urban area, he should not only know that how the demonetization impacted the urban areas, you should also know how it impacted the people living in rural areas, remote areas. Plus with that, you should know what were the advantages or what were the benefits the government occurred due to demonetization, and what are the benefits what are the benefits or difficulties faced by the bank officials, and how will it impact the overall economy of a country, etc. So therefore, you should have an overall analysis of all the dimensions instead of focusing on just one narrow dimension. So, in case if a citizen arrive at a quick decision without this overall analysis, it will be more destructive for the democracy itself. Now the question is, citizen being a normal man or layman, how will he analyze the overall dimensions of the impact of a particular government initiative or the policy? So to his help, there comes the civil society. Civil society is a site for the acquisition of political wisdom, and it also provides a platform to discuss the various government measures, policies, etc. and the various reports brought out by the civil society organization like social audit reports and the report cards, etc. They keep a watch on acts of government. Plus, media also play a very important role in informing the citizen about the effectiveness of the government initiatives. Therefore, identification of the crucial issues, analysis, and recommendations by the committed activists contribute greatly to the making of political judgment by the citizens. And the next part of the editorial speaks about the various, roles played by the parties in states like UP, Punjab, Goa, etc., which is not important for exam. So this, that's it for this editorial. Now let's move on to our next editorial. The next editorial is the Champaran example. Here the writer gives the example of the Champaran incident to demonstrate what is constructive politics. Now let's look into what is constructive politics. So constructive politics is the one that does not treat the opposition as the enemy, but it tries to bring about change without damaging the social harmony. So the best example is the Gandhi's Champaran movement. Now let's look into what is Gandhi's Champaran movement, which is important for the history point of view. So in April 1917, the Gandhi arrived at the scene or arrived at Champaran not to lead an agitation but with the purpose of studying the problem. So he came to Champaran not with an intention to lead an agitation but in order to study the various problems of not only the people but also the various stakeholders. Important lesson to learn from Gandhiji in this particular incident is that he ensured that the interest of all the stakeholders involved in a particular issue are taken into consideration. Ensured that all the stakeholders were given an opportunity to voice their concerns. So, for example, if with the planters he had a very respectful relation, so he did not go against them, and with the government and officials he kept the government informed about his movement and he remained mindful of its advice. So coming to the people, Gandhiji studied the problem of people and he started documenting the testimonies from the peasants about their miserable condition and he started submitting it to the government and officials. And plus, there was tendency among the people to rebel against the government. The best thing what Gandhiji did was he managed to curtail the rebellion tendencies among the people against the government because he knew that if people rebel against the government, it will only lead to the repression by the government. Now what followed was that the planters who were irritated by the huge publicity Gandhiji received and they started calling for a governmental inquiry into the peasant condition. So the provincial government, which was elected at first, then they formed a commission which included Gandhiji as a representative of the peasants. And another important point to show that Gandhiji ensured that interest of all stakeholders are met, that he emphasized that commission should not be too harsh on the planters and they should also make specific deals for the planters. So the commission recommended the abolishment of the indigo cultivation, which was a major victory for peasants, but also it allowed the planters for with some relief. So this is how the interest of both the stakeholders like the peasants and the planters were met. And it's very crucial to remember that Gandhiji realized this even without a single protest march, without a single anti-planter speech, or even without a newspaper editorial criticizing the government. This is how we ensure that interest of all the stakeholders are taken into consideration without going against them. Now moving on to next editorial, which is the Missing the Asian Tailwind. This editorial is basically about writers suggesting that India should join One Belt One Road initiative. So before looking into that issue, now let's look into India's historical background. Till 1757, India was the richest country with its wealth based on the textile export. Like to say, India almost clothed the world. Then came the British, who used our resources to oil their or to boost up their industrial revolution in their country, and thus bringing about colonialization and impoverishment of India. And in 1950, still India was richer than China. But now India is just fifth the size of the Chinese economy. Soon China will surpass the US as the largest economy. And it is also said that by 2050, India will take over China as the youngest country in the world. Now, it is the duty of India to ensure, to use our demographic dividend to our own advantage to boost our economy and also project India as the, emerging power or the superpower. So, in this regard, let's look at the engagement of India with other countries. India's Lucas policy, taking India's Lucas policy, there's not much progress done or not very much impactful. And if you take the Look West policy, India is spending $500 million in the Chabahar port. But if you compare with the China-Pakistan economic corridor, which the China is investing around $46 billion, the investment by India on Chabahar ports seems very less. And this China-Pakistan economic corridor, it connects the Gwadar port, which is just 100 kilometers away from the Chabahar port, to China. And despite India's investment in the Afghanistan, India has been excluded from the political discussions there. Example being the Quadrilateral Coordination Group. And also the writer talks about the competition from One Belt One Road initiative. Asian countries, Russia, they're all showing interest to join the One Belt One Road initiative. And also Europe is also showing interest to join One Belt One Road initiative despite the protest from the US. So all this is showing the reemergence of China in the global agenda. Other examples being the failure of the US to include the Asia in the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership, and also failure of the US to deter China in the South China Sea and also through Asian pivot, and also a failure of the US to prevent the establishment of various institutions like Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, even though it asked the Europe to keep out of these institutions. So, the China is fast replacing the global rules with the connectivity, One Belt, One Road initiative through infrastructure, new institutions, and also through integrated markets. Now, coming to the India stand, India does not support One Belt, One Road initiative. So coming to the US future stand, this is all just based on the Donald Trump's election rhetoric. Now it's better for us to wait and watch about how wait and watch regarding the US policy with the China. So based on Donald Trump's election rhetoric, he has shown less interest in the participation in UN, and given his emphasis on the better ties with Russia, it seems like NATO will be redundant. So all this is showing a better ties with US, Russia and China, but all these three countries have one concern in common, which is the threat to themselves from terrorist safe havens like those in Pakistan. So in regard to this, the importance of India in dealing with the terrorism was recognized, as the US Senate designated India as a major defense partner to facilitate the defense sales. And other measures like US provided the Pakistan with nearly $1 billion in military assistance to act against the Haqqani network operating in Afghanistan. But there's concern for India because the US is silent on the safe havens of the terrorist groups operating against India. So the writer, taking into consideration various changing global scenarios like reemergence of China against the USA, and interest shown by the various countries in joining One Belt One Road initiative, unexpected improvement of ties between US, Russia, China, etc. The writer concludes that India should be part of One Belt One Road initiative. Now let's look at the various advantages and disadvantages of India joining One Belt One Road initiative. Now looking at the advantage, with the India joining the One Belt One Road initiative, it helps in shifting of power from the Western countries to the Asia. And also One Belt One Road initiative can be integrated with the India's own Spice Route and Mosam projects in order for the economic and strategic gains. And also with India can have benefit from the infrastructure like ports, railways, and also from the oil and gas pipelines of the One Belt One Road initiative, thus reducing the pressure on trade imbalance due to the energy imports. Now next, coming to the funding, substantial amount is expected to be financed by Asian Investment and Infrastructure Bank and New Development Bank, and India being a member of both these institutes, India can use this amount in order to bring about infrastructure development in our own country. Now coming to the disadvantages if India joined the One Belt One Road initiative, or first let's take the disadvantage of One Belt One Road initiative to India. See, China's penetration in Africa and Southeast Asia will drive out the Indian goods. Now other disadvantages are, with the influx of Chinese goods in the Indian market, it definitely creates the instability in our own market. So other disadvantage is that it might disturb the India and US relationships, and Other disadvantages with the China's domination in the Indian Ocean, it definitely threats the, Indian presence strategically. So, these are the advantages and disadvantages of India joining the One Belt One Road initiative. So, that's it for today's editorial. If you have found this editorial useful, please like and subscribe to my channel, and also give me your feedback. Thanks for watching.